Welcome to the Hallmark Publishing audiobook sampler, brought to you by Dreamscape Media. In this bundle, you will be able to sample all new Hallmark Publishing audiobooks that includes A Christmas to Remember, A Heavenly Christmas, and Christmas in Homestead. Enjoy. Book 1, A Christmas to Remember, written by Rebecca Mesta and narrated by Taylor Meskimen.
Chapter 1. Christmas was a magical time of year in New York. Wallman Rink was open in Central Park, and a gigantic Christmas tree graced Rockefeller Plaza. Holiday music was ubiquitous, and strains of songs like All I Want for Christmas, It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year, and Sleigh Ride seemed to follow Jennifer Wade everywhere she went. Lights twinkled on buildings, trees, and food carts. A faint dusting of snow still clung to the grass in the parks that Jennifer passed as she walked at a brisk pace from the subway to the kitchen network building where she worked. Wreaths hung from lampposts. The smells of hot cocoa with cinnamon and roasting nuts made her mouth water. There was no time to enjoy the Christmassy sights and sounds, though. She had a TV show to record, and she didn't want to be late. After all, the popular weekly show, Homestyle with Jennifer Wade, on the Kitchen Network, was named for her. Posters for Homestyle were plastered all over New York City, even on the sides of buses. Being on billboards and buses came with a certain level of pressure. She didn't take the responsibility lightly and made sure that each show was polished down to the last detail. That's what her viewers had come to expect of her, and she demanded no less of herself. This morning, they were taping Jennifer's Christmas special, and she wanted everything to be perfect. But nothing ever was it? There was always some aspect that could be improved. Had she forgotten anything? She couldn't shake a faint feeling of worry that hovered at the edge of her thoughts, spurring her to walk faster. Once inside the network building, she rushed through hair and makeup, then changed into the outfit she had chosen after spending almost 2 days trying on various possibilities. Elegant yet simple, it complemented her dyed blonde hair and pale skin. "Oh my gosh, I hope we got this wardrobe looking right," Jennifer said to the wardrobe assistant, Amy, as they headed through the soundstage toward the set. Dressed in a sweatshirt and jeans, with her hair up in a ponytail, the girl seemed young, and Jennifer tried to impress on her how important clothing choices were. Of course, the crew of the show didn't always appreciate her penchant for perfectionism. Around the set, they joked that there were 2 ways of doing anything: Jennifer's way and the wrong way. Jennifer walked fast and talked faster, as she usually did when she was wound up. "Because," she continued, "last week Angela from Duluth posted that she thought that my look was too New York. What am I supposed to do? I'm trying to stride that fine line between looking fashion-forward and what the Midwest wants." She wanted viewers to like her and identify with her. That's why Jennifer spent countless hours each week poring over the network website and Homestyle's social media pages. Viewer opinions definitely affected her choices. "I thought maybe they would like this nice ice silver," she explained, smoothing a hand down the sleeve of her pale gray silk blouse. She had added a princess-length triple strand of cut glass beads in a neutral color. Not too big city for her viewers, right? Or was it? Her forehead creased with tension as the words rushed out. "You know, like in that movie where they freeze everything?" Ian Carroll, the show's director, bustled up to her, his short beard, Wayfarer-style glasses, burgundy pullover, and gray winter scarf with matching gray slacks hinted at his fastidious nature. That was a major plus as far as Jennifer was concerned. He always seemed pulled together, whether it was his clothes, his office, or his attitude. He cared about the big things and the little things and got them all done. Maybe that's why he had a calming influence on her. "Jennifer, you don't seem happy," Ian said. "How can we make you happy?" Forgetting about her wardrobe for the moment, Jennifer let her eyes scan the set. Christmas pervaded the atmosphere of Homestyle, but she started to see flaws right away. Her eyes found the Christmas tree near the refrigerator in her TV kitchen. "Oh my gosh, it's so green and sad." "The tree?" Ian asked. He always tried to make sure he understood what she meant before he took action. Jennifer winced. The tree was definitely an issue for her. A green fir with uninspired green and silver decorations. Green on green wouldn't look good on camera at all. And why did it have to be green? One of her least favorite colors. That wasn't the tree's only failing. "Look, it's also dying on the bottom." She pointed out a few lower branches that were beginning to turn brown. While the brown added contrast, it wasn't exactly an improvement. Ian raised his voice so the set dressers working around him could hear. "Somebody cheer this tree up, please." Letting Ian take care of the tree, Jennifer turned around just as Cynthia wheeled a gingerbread Empire State Building out on a cart. "Oh, whoa there," Jennifer said, instantly keying in on a problem. "What's going on with all the toy cars?" The size of the cars was completely wrong next to the majestic building. "I thought it would be cute," Cynthia said. "But this is the Empire State Building. It's supposed to be magnificent," Jennifer pointed out. Cynthia gave her a perplexed look. "But it's just gingerbread." "I know," Jennifer cut in. There was no time to waste. Was she the only one who could see how awful it looked? With a forced smile, she explained. "But the scale. It's ixnay on the RSK, okay?" "I'm sorry, you got it," Cynthia said, rolling the display cart away. Belatedly, Jennifer realized how discouraging her words must have been, so she added, "But good job with everything else." Ian, who was a master at smoothing ruffled feathers, reassured Cynthia. "Really good. Love it." "Yeah, really good," Jennifer repeated, feeling slightly guilty. But there was no time to dwell on it. She made an impatient gesture, anxious to get on with the show. At least she knew one thing that was absolutely perfect since she had done the work herself. "Now, where's that turkey? I am so excited." A moment later, a prop man appeared carrying the turkey on a large serving platter. The food on a TV show like Homestyle with Jennifer Wade could not simply look okay. It had to be perfect for the camera, and perfect food took hours of extra prep work. Jennifer sometimes thought of it as makeup for cuisine. The golden brown bird coming toward her, heaped with stuffing and nestled on a bed of greens, looked even better than Jennifer had remembered. Her attention to detail had certainly paid off, and she was thrilled to see the results. "Oh, it's so beautiful. I love..." The prop man raised the turkey for her to see it better. Then he tripped. Turkey dressing and garnish flew toward her, hit her dead center, and slid down her silk shirt to land on the floor. A high-pitched "ah" of surprise escaped her lips. Jennifer looked down and took in the scope of the catastrophe. The perfectly browned turkey lying broken on the floor, surrounded by a jumble of greens, the prop man trying to gather everything back onto the serving platter, and her own grease-stained blouse, obviously ruined. Why had she decided not to wear a Christmas apron for the show? At least her short black skirt had been spared. "I'm so sorry, the prop man said. "Oh, no," Jennifer wailed. She didn't need an apology. She needed a miracle. "I spent an hour and a half on the left thigh alone." Dazed, she tried to step to one side, slipped on the greasy floor, and caught herself on the counter. In an instant, Ian was beside her, doing damage control. "Don't worry, we have a backup turkey," the prop man said. Oh, no. Jennifer looked down at herself again. The situation seemed hopeless. She breathed faster, trying to fill her lungs with air. Her throat constricted. "Okay, but we don't have a backup shirt, do we?" Her voice rose. "We don't have a backup shirt!" "We do have a backup shirt." Ian motioned to a wardrobe assistant. "Flying in, backup shirt." Amy rushed forward, carrying a mallard green silk blouse, and held it out to Jennifer, who couldn't help but stare at it aghast. "That's not the same shirt." Jennifer had tried so hard to prepare a perfect show for her viewers, but her dream of presenting the perfect Christmas on TV was crumbling. "It's the same shirt, just a different color," Amy assured her. "But it's green," Jennifer protested, feeling suddenly shaky. "I hate green." "Listen, everything is going to be okay." Ian's soothing voice broke in. "We can spray the backup turkey, and we'll be good." She could tell he was trying to manage her, but she didn't mind because it was helping. The anxiety dropped a notch, and her heartbeat began to slow down. Would things be okay? She gave Ian a melancholy look. "No, it won't be perfect. Everything was supposed to be perfect," she fretted. "It's the holiday special." No. It'll totally be perfect," Ian said with a confident smile. He turned and shouted to the crew. "Okay, people, let's prep that backup turkey." Amy put a comforting arm around her as they walked back to Jennifer's dressing room to change. In the end, despite the mishaps, the taping of the show went so well that Jennifer wore a broad smile as they shot the final scene in her home-style dining room. She held the beautiful turkey up for the camera before placing it at the center of a table set with taupe stoneware plates and bowls, red tapers and clear candlesticks, and simple crystal stemware. The rest of the meal was arrayed around the turkey: colorful mixed vegetables, salad, cranberry sauce, and whipped butternut squash. She wished she could have spent some time staining the turkey a bit darker, maybe putting a sheen on it with some oil and a blowtorch. It looks so delicious. I just can't wait to eat that turkey," she said. Of course she didn't want to eat this actual turkey, which, like most stage turkeys, was mostly raw and only enhanced and styled to look good in photography. but a real holiday turkey like her mom used to cook sounded wonderful. Clasping her hands in front of her, Jennifer looked directly into the camera and spoke to her viewers. Thank you so much for joining me on my Christmas special. I'm Jennifer Wade, and from all of us at Homestyle, we wish you a Christmas to remember. And cut, Ian called. Jennifer blew out a breath of relief. The show hadn't been perfect, but it had turned out pretty darn well, considering how things had started. She hoped it was good enough to please her viewers.
Book 2, A Heavenly Christmas, written by Rhonda Merwarth and narrated by Rebecca Gibble.
Chapter 1. Eve Morgan sighed as the Christmas song blaring through her alarm clock pulled her out of a deep sleep. Wasn't it just Thanksgiving? She murmured to herself. The days were passing faster than she'd realized. She changed the station to a financial report program and slid out of bed. Though it was clearly cold out with a thick layer of snow covering the trees and ground outside her apartment complex, Eve was cozy in her silky gray pajamas. She patted her way across her smooth tile floor and started her day. Shower, dress, makeup, hair, all finished right on time. She had her schedule down to a science, and she prided herself on it. Her brain was already running down the massive list of things she needed to accomplish that day. New client cold calls, stocks review for existing clients, meetings. It would all get done, and she'd stay as late as it took to ensure that. When she got into her kitchen, she saw her cat perched on the countertop and shook her head. That doggone cat was so stubborn, refusing to stay on the ground where she kept trying to move him. But oh well, she could indulge him. "Good morning, Forbes," she said lightly, putting down her cell phone on the granite counter and shifting to the drawer where she stored the cat's food. "We need to look at your portfolio," she teased the animal. "I think it's time to diversify." The cat meowed its opinion on the topic. At least her clients showed more enthusiasm for her suggestions. She'd helped make them a lot of money, and they appreciated that, and her. She slid the bowl across the counter to the cat. "There you go." With a smile, she grabbed her phone, taking a peek at the stock app she'd pulled up. Catnip is trading up. Ooh. Eve grabbed a bottle of water from her stainless steel fridge, then added to the cat, "All right, text me if you need me." Forbes ignored her teasing comments, focusing on his meal. Eve stepped out her front door, locking it behind her, then headed to the elevator. Before the doors could shut, her neighbor Ruth slipped in, dressed in what could only be described as a garish green Christmas sweater. Her Yorkie was curled up in her arm, as cozy as a bug. The dog was rather yippy and not that friendly to anyone but Ruth. "Hello, Eve," Ruth said with a smile as she moved to the back of the elevator. Her dark skin was glowing with her happy mood, and she hummed under her breath, probably a Christmas song. The woman had been singing them since early November. "Hey, Ruth." She could see the red and green lights on the sweater blinking in the elevator door reflection. "Wow, that is some sweater," she said as tactfully as possible. "Well, thanks." She could hear the perkiness in Ruth's voice. Her neighbor loved the holidays and was always inviting Eve to participate in this or that Christmas celebration in her apartment next door. Eve always declined, not really one for parties, or holidays to be truthful. Thankfully, the walls were thick enough that she barely heard the ruckus. "I could pick you up one. There are quite a few left." Oh, heavens no, Eve thought with a mental shudder. Totally not her style. She replied to a client's text, confirming their upcoming meeting time later today. "That's okay," she said to Ruth, in what she hoped was a non-horrified tone. "I think that is a one sweater per building sweater." She stepped out onto the sidewalk and made her way to her office, scrolling through her phone at her emails. Her heels clacked solidly on the concrete. The morning air was crisp. It felt like winter, even though it was technically still a few days away. Christmas decorations covered all of downtown Chicago in preparation for the holiday festivities. People were bundled up in their warmest gear as she strolled past them, barely glancing up from her phone. Her brain was already whirring with the day's tasks and the potential clients she wanted to reach out to. One in particular would be a sweet success to acquire. She dug up his office number and dialed him, mentally prepping herself and getting into saleswoman mode. But it didn't matter. The client was already on vacation for the holidays, diving in the Caymans. Fighting back her surprise and disappointment, she left a message asking him to call her back when he returned to work. A Santa ringing a bell caught her attention for a moment, and she grabbed a few bucks from her pocket, dropping them into the Santa's cup. There, her good deed for the day. She dialed the next call in line. As she entered her building and walked back to her office, she continued chatting on the phone with her current client, briefly noting that the office was decorated for the holidays too. Bright lights were strung across cubicles along with sparkling garland and wreaths filling every visible surface. Well, not in her office. She didn't have time for such things. Her apartment wasn't decorated either. Why bother when you were just going to take it down a couple of weeks later? It seemed like a waste of time. Eve ended the call, tucked her phone into her pocket, and went to the coffee station, greeting her coworker Carter as he prepared a fresh, steaming cup of java for himself. The thick smell filled her nose, and she could almost taste the concoction. "Coming to the party tomorrow?" he asked, pouring a dollop of creamer into his holiday mug. She chose a plain one for herself and grabbed the coffee decanter. "What party?" He looked over at her in disbelief. "The office Christmas party?" "Oh, right." Yet again she realized how fast December was flying by and how much work she still had to get done before the end of the year to meet her personal goals. These Christmas events took up important business hours when she could be doing more for the company. Who had time for those kinds of distractions? She poured her coffee mug to almost full. "Tell me you're not working," he said. This was their typical conversation every holiday season. Okay, not just Christmas time. The company liked to throw parties for everything, and she never went to any of them. "Well, while you're drinking eggnog, I'm going to be improving our bottom line," she tossed over her shoulder as she headed toward her office, clutching her mug. "I remember being like you once," he said lightly. "Mm-hmm," she said with a smile. Carter teased her, but he knew her dedication was to Crest Lane Financial, to getting things done and making the company prosper, and she was a success at that. The morning passed in a fury of calls. As a financial consultant, Eve excelled at her job. She kept detailed notes of personal information about her existing clients and potential clients to make them feel important. Small things like that could make a difference. She kicked up her heels on her desk and rang up a potential client she'd been wooing, chatting with him for a few minutes. She asked about his daughter and her dressage lessons. "Yes, of course I remember," she said, chuckling at his disbelief over her recalling something so minute. "Okay, enough chit-chat. Time to get down to brass tacks and make this happen." She plopped her feet down on the ground and straightened her spine. "Look, I am just going to say it and let the chips fall where they may." A hooky line she'd perfected over the years that worked wonders on clients she was pursuing. Apex East is a solid firm. But what are they doing for you, 3%? She paused, then dropped her bombshell. "I can double it." There was a moment of silence, then he said in his rumbling voice, "Okay, I'm interested in hearing your spiel. Let's get together soon." A warmth filled her chest. She had him. "Drinks tonight?" she said with a smile. Then her grin got bigger when he agreed. "Yes, of course. Très bien. I'll have my assistant set it up." "Fantastic," he replied. "Okay, bye." She couldn't hold back her giddiness now. This was going to be a good catch for them. Fontaine Fowler was a reputable pharmaceuticals company, and taking them from Apex East would be a solid victory. Her assistant, Liz, came through the glass door and paused. You bought a tree? She asked in shock, staring with large brown eyes at the scrawny, plastic green tree sitting against Eve's far wall. A client gift, Eve corrected. What color is that? She asked, wrinkling her nose. Celery? Anyway, enough of that nonsense. Eve couldn't keep the pride out of her voice as she said, We need to set up and print a new client signature pack because I'm going to sign Fontaine Fowler. That's fantastic, her assistant declared, beaming. I thought they were with Apex East. Yeah, but not for long, she said in a sing-song voice, getting out of her chair. Liz clutched a pack of folders to her chest. That's why you're my idol. She knew the woman admired her, but hearing words of affirmation along that vein gave her a flush of pleasure. Eve had fought hard to get where she was, and it made her feel good to have her successes recognized by those around her. I'm going to sign one new client before the new year, and I'm going to beat out Carter for that partnership. This was finally hers. The goal she'd worked long hours day after day for. Victory was on the horizon, and her dreams were about to come true. Not that she would be content to sit back and rest. No. After she became partner, she had big ideas to help the company be even more aggressive in finding new clients and maintaining their existing ones. Eve lived and breathed her job. Leaning over to check something on her computer, she instructed her assistant to book a table for the City Club at 6 and to note that she had a conference call at 12:30 with Gibson so she'd get him on the line. Conflict, the assistant said plainly. You have lunch with your brother today. Eve closed her eyes and groaned. Crud. That's today? Apparently, the refrain for the day was going to be about how fast time was flying and how she couldn't squeeze in non-work distractions. Not when there was so much to do before the end of the year. Every second counted. The pressure of looming deadlines made her chest tighten. Seeming to predict her next thought, Liz added, And you told me not to let you cancel again since you have 3 times already. Eve shook her head, scrambling to figure out a plan to squeeze it in and still make her meeting. You know what? We'll book the conference room for noon. That way I can have half an hour and catch up with him. Okay, Liz said briskly. Thank you, she hollered as her assistant left. A half hour would suffice. Her brother would understand. This really was a crazy time of year for them. He knew how it went. She'd explained it to him enough anyway. Eve pushed the thoughts from her mind and focused on the rest of her morning tasks. Emails had to be answered, and they'd wait for no one. Hey, Eve said cheerily as she walked into the glass-walled conference room. Her brother, Tyler, and his 2 sons were there waiting on her. I didn't know you were bringing the boys. She waved them toward her and gave them big hugs. What a great surprise! We wanted to make sure you're real, Caleb, the oldest boy, said. Her brother laughed at the flippant comment. Where were you hiding? Bobby, the younger, asked, peering up at her. Hey, Tyler said in a sterner tone, clenching the boy's shoulders. Manners. All right, the comments from the boys stung her a bit. Her smile wavered. She fought off the flare of negative emotion and said lightly in an effort to change the subject, Okay, so big question. What do you want for Christmas? You already gave us something, Bobby said. What? She frowned. She hadn't done any holiday shopping yet. She never had the time. Not that she did it. Liz helped out with those things. But she liked to give Liz the ideas for gifts, and that had to count for something. A company fruit basket. Bobby's voice was flat. She winced. Big fail. She loved her nephews and couldn't believe she'd done something so boneheaded. How had that happened? Lines must have gotten crossed somehow. She'd have to pull Liz aside and see where things went wrong. Oh. Okay, so, what do you think about bikes? The boys gasped and yelled in unison, "Bikes? That's awesome!" At their pleased expressions, some of her guilt faded. She'd make it up to them. This year's present would blow it out of the water. That's too much, her brother protested. "No, it's fine," she said, patting his arm to try to convince him. The more she thought about it, the better the idea seemed. Bikes were the perfect gifts for the boys. They loved being outside whenever the weather was good. At least that was what her brother had told her anyway. "It's for Christmas. It only comes once a year." "Thank goodness," she added under her breath. "Come on," she said to her nephews, guiding them toward the table. "Look what I got for you. Let's have some cookies. Yum, yum." As she poured them drinks, she apologized to Tyler about the change in lunch plans, explaining she had a conference call she couldn't move. "Please tell me you're still coming for Christmas," Tyler said instead, not addressing her apology. Eve froze for a moment. "Sherry's making your favorite. It's the, special green beans," he continued. Eve grimaced and purposely didn't look at her brother. That familiar guilt came back, hot and heavy and sitting in a lump in her stomach. Every year he nagged her about coming to the house, and she often did. Why, she was just there No, wait. Was it 2 years ago? Maybe 3? Anyway, it was pretty recently. Her brother thrust his hands into his pockets, disbelief ringing in his voice as he scoffed. He always could read her. "It's Oak Park. It's a half-hour cab ride." She finally turned to him, shaking her head with regret. She had to make him understand. "But I'm just so busy." Tyler sighed. "Eve." "I'm about to make partner," she emphasized as she poured herself some coffee. The boys were chatting at the table about what cookies they wanted to try. I'm this close. You know, Chris Lane hasn't even nominated someone for partner in 10 years. She was going to be the one nominated. Then Tyler would support her in this. Tyler sipped his own coffee and gave her a cursory glance. "That's great, sis." His voice was chilly. She hated letting him down, having their old familiar argument crop back up again. The one where he called her a workaholic, and she protested that she wasn't, that she was just as passionate about her work as he was about his family. But he sighed again. "Look, I know we didn't have a lot when we were kids, but we had each other." She rolled her eyes. Here it comes. So predictable. Tyler didn't understand her drive. Never had. And to bring their past into it? Okay, yeah, their family had always been tight on money. So? "Now you're working all the time," he continued. What about the rest of your life?" He waved in the direction of her nephews, the gesture saying more than words could. She didn't have a family of her own, not like he did. "I'll get to it," she protested. And she would. On her schedule. Not because people were pressuring her. She wasn't like Tyler, who lived for his kids and wife and didn't have bigger aspirations for himself. She wanted more. At least for right now. There would be time later for all of that stuff. The house and kids and white picket fence. When? His voice warmed up with the strength of his convictions. "You never see your family. You put all your relationships on the back burner." "No, that's not true," she lobbed back. Irritation at his words festered in her. And she did see her family when she could. Truth be told, maybe it wasn't as much as they wanted her to. But she made the effort. "Really? When was the last time you let anyone in?" Tyler took a sip of his coffee. "Ugh, and here we go," she thought with a wry smile. Moving on to the fact that she didn't have a significant other. The argument pattern was as familiar as it was tiring. "Well, actually, I have a relationship," she declared, putting her mug on the table. Time to end this argument. She wanted to enjoy their remaining minutes together, not bicker. My relationship is a long-distance relationship because my boyfriend is in the future. She slugged his upper arm and he groaned, but a peak of a smile warmed his face. Tension leaked from her shoulders and she relaxed. Crisis averted. She knew the topic wasn't dropped and he'd be back to poking at her about it soon enough. But for now, she could just enjoy their company. "Eve," Liz said, entering the room. "Can I talk to you for a second?" "Yes," she said, spinning to face her assistant. "Definitely. But first, go get my nephews some bikes." Liz just eyed her, and Tyler gave a heavy sigh.
"Eve,"
he started, but she waved Liz away to go on her errand. "They're going to love them," Eve assured her brother when the woman left. See, she could do this. Have family time and do some personal shopping. She'd picked out the gift idea on her own. What did it matter who bought it? Wasn't he always telling her it was the thought that counted? The rest of the day flew by in a flurry of meetings, and before Eve knew it, it was time to meet the doctor for drinks. She shut down her computer and exited her office. The whole building was dark. When had everyone left? She'd been too busy to notice. "Taxi!" Eve hollered with a frantic wave as she stepped out of the building into the bitter cold night, striding across the snow-sloshed sidewalk toward the street. One cab slowed down, so she rushed across the asphalt to catch it, only to have a man reach for the door handle at the same time. "Oh, sorry," she said to him on reflex, pulling back. "Sorry," he echoed, and did the same. Taking his apology as affirmation that the cab was hers, she reached for the handle again, at the same time he did. She eyed him. Snow coated his thick black hair and dotted his eyelashes. He was striking with a strong jaw and piercing dark eyes. Still, she didn't have time for this. "I was here first."
"Well, I'm pretty sure we were here at the same time,"
he answered smoothly. His voice was warm and rumbling. After a moment, he said,
Are you going north?"
She nodded. "Yeah, north side." He smiled, and the gesture made her stomach flip for some odd reason.
"Me too. Want to share?"
She glanced down for a moment, pondering it, then shrugged. Okay, why not? She could be magnanimous, so long as she made her meeting on time. They got in and rode down the street, him tucking a guitar case between his legs, resting the bottom on the floor. She flipped through her email notifications on her phone and made brief, idle chit-chat with the stranger, but the Christmas music playing was irritating and distracting. She asked the driver to change the station.
"You don't like Christmas music?"
the guy beside her said. She snorted. Oh, it goes on and on and on. And every Christmas season, all the stations were inundated with it, non-stop. How was no one else but her burned out on hearing it so much? Ugh. He started to sing a Christmas song, and she side-eyed him. He stopped. "Partridges in trees," she said, leaning toward him and waving a hand. What do those words even mean?
"I'm pretty sure they're called lyrics,"
he said evenly. Funny guy. But they're non-migratory birds. If they did make a nest, it wouldn't even be in a pear tree. The stranger didn't say anything, just stared at her. Whatever, she knew she had a rational point. When she realized they were close to Madison, she directed the taxi driver to turn onto it. Funny guy quickly protested that they should stay on this road because of traffic. "Yeah, but my stop is first," she retorted. He tightened his arms around his chest, eyeing her.
"Well, you're going to make me late."
"You're going to make me late for a very important meeting." She tried to maintain her patience even though frustration was welling in her at his presumption. First, he'd tried to take her cab, and now he was going to possibly ruin her drinks with her prospective client. No way. So much was riding on this.
Life or death important?
He asked her, brows raised, clearly not believing it was. Actually, yes. Her words were firm. She knew this was more important than whatever he was doing. Some kind of open mic night thing? It could wait.
Okay,
He murmured, giving in. Thank heavens. She returned her attention back to the driver and instructed him to turn right. Into a thick batch of traffic.
and jingle all the way,
Her ride partner said flatly. She sighed. No way could she wait in this traffic. She'd never make it in time. Well, I'm going to walk. She grabbed a handful of cash and handed it to the driver. Here, thank you. Good luck with your guitar thing, she said to the passenger.
Happy holidays,
He told her with a slight wave of one hand. When the woman exited the cab, Max Wingford told the driver,
you can turn the music back on.
What an odd encounter. Yes, it had left him a touch bristly over being left in terrible traffic, but he was also curious about who the mysterious woman was. Who argued logistics about Christmas songs? Strange, cab-commanding women, he supposed. Ah well, time to focus and get his head in the game. His audition needed all of his attention, and he knew Lauren would be grilling him about it tomorrow when she returned from her sleepover at her grandparents'. He didn't want to let her down. Max finally arrived at the auditorium and stared at the marquee declaring auditions tonight for the Christmas Eve concert being held there. No one seemed to be entering or exiting the building, but he was pretty sure that even though he was late, he could probably slip in. His guitar case, as heavy as a rock, rested against his back, his hands shaking as he clenched the strap. Passers-by wandered down the sidewalk in the thickening snow, and he stood there for a moment, willing himself to go in. He could do this. Yeah, it had been a long time, and yeah, he was solo now. And okay, he was pretty out of practice. And his original songs weren't all that great anymore without his sister's help. He couldn't do this. Couldn't make himself step inside. His feet felt glued down, his heart frozen behind his ribcage. His throat was tight as he turned and walked down the sidewalk, away from the audition. It was probably better this way.
Book 3, Christmas in Homestead, written by Kara Tate and narrated by Emily Lawrence.
Chapter 1. As Jessica McEllis rode in the back of her custom, tinted-window town car to her home in a chic, gated community of Los Angeles, she rested easy and knowing exactly how blessed she was to have the life she did. It was what she'd been working toward for years, and now all her dreams were coming true. She was at the top of her game as an actress and about to start her new adventure and climb the next rung on her career ladder, producer. She'd strive to get here, and, well, so what if she'd given up certain things to achieve her dreams? No one got everything they wanted. But a little privacy would be nice occasionally. Sometimes she felt tired. Like right now, as she returned from a meeting with her agent. As her driver/bodyguard/superhero Gavin pulled up to the gate of her posh home, he had to slow down to avoid hitting the gaggle of paparazzi, hoping to catch a good shot of her, and maybe even a word or two. Sure, sometimes the fame could take a toll in a way Jessica had never expected. But it was that same fame and success that enabled her to pick and choose which stories she wanted to tell. And this new movie was her most exciting venture yet. The car rolled to a stop to let the gate slip open. "Jessica! Jessica!" The photo-shooting life chasers were respectful enough to not get aggressive and pound on the car. They'd always treated her well, or as well as you could treat someone whose life you used to get paid. She tried to remember they were just doing their job and to handle them fairly in return. Hollywood was a tough world. She got it. She didn't have to like it, but she got it. After all, not many people had the opportunities and lifestyle these compromises afforded her. She traveled the world, met interesting people, and posed for some of the top photographers. Dealing with paparazzi was just the other part of the job description. Focusing on the good in her life helped her smile through the invasion of her privacy. It was what she did, every day. Jess placed the camera-ready, friendly grin on her face as she lowered the window. "Hi, guys. Good to see you, as always." She did a quick scan of the group, filled with the usual suspects, and a few more hoping to grab a great shot of her before the new movie. "Jessica!" Ian Carter, who had always been ambitious but kind, shouted, waving his free hand to get her attention. "We saw Vince Hawkins arrive. What's it like doing another film with your ex-boyfriend?" She'd known that would be a popular question when she'd cast her ex in the role of the innkeeper to her movie star. Star-crossed lovers of the modern type. She just hadn't thought she'd hear the same question quite this often. She was also for world peace, against global warming, and pro-classic pencil skirts, but no one ever asked her about those. Ex-boyfriend, guys. Key word here is ex. She gave them her best sassy grin to let them know it was all in fun. No hard feelings. Then sent the focus back to where she wanted it, the movie. It's going to be a great film. And that was all that mattered. She'd agreed to bring Vince on because they worked well together and had amazing on-screen chemistry. She needed the best chance at success she could get with her first film as a producer, and was willing to take whatever measures she had to, even if that meant dealing with the celebrity gossip hounds creating un-stories about her and her co-star. She flashed the photographers another warm smile and started to roll up her window before giving them all a little wave. The continued shouts of her name echoed in the car as she collapsed back against the rich leather seats. It was time to put her producer hat on, now that she'd gotten her actress duties out of the way. "Gavin." She leaned forward to talk to her bodyguard as he pulled up to her front door. "We're definitely heading into new territory with this one." He flashed her a wide smile in the rearview mirror and nodded his agreement. "Oh, Gavin, you chatty fellow, you." Before getting out of the car, she straightened her skirt and pulled it as low as she could. She had no interest in being the next accidental flasher and going viral with her panties showing. Those super-powered lenses meant always being hyper-cognizant. That awareness had become second nature. One slip-up early in her career, when she'd accidentally tucked her skirt into her panties and had ended up on a celebrity gossip site, had trained her well. Gavin came around and opened the door, doing his best to screen her from view as she slid out. As shields went, Gavin was more like a wall, actually. Standing over 6 feet 2 inches, his bulk was intimidating enough. But his drown-in-them dark brown eyes and gorgeous smile made him look like the action star version of a bodyguard, as much as the real deal. All this had made him the obvious choice to play her bodyguard in the new movie. The look Gavin had given her had said it all. His gift with looks was particularly helpful since Gavin was a man of few words. Actually, most of the time, He was a man of no words. Jessica gave another wave down the drive and headed toward the house, pulling off her hat as she went. It was good to be home. Her house was a sanctuary, the true center of her world, away from prying eyes and being public Jessica. Everything how she liked it. Clean lines, organized. A place where she had complete control. A place where there was suddenly a huge, beautifully decorated Christmas tree. Behind her, Gavin stopped, obviously taking in the new addition as well. At least, she'd like to think he was wondering what in the world it was doing in her living room, since that was exactly what she was thinking. Jess! Rosalie, her publicist, stood, Christmas ball in hand, in front of the room's new addition. What do you think? Rosalie, what is that? Jessica motioned to the tree, even though she was pretty sure Rosalie must know the huge, pine-scented thing in her living room was the obvious issue. It's a Christmas tree. Rosalie flashed her a stunning smile and waved the ornament in her hand a bit before finding a home for it on the tree. Yes. Well, ask a silly question. It's beautiful. Why is it in my house? Rosalie set the next decoration down and turned to Jessica. She continued to smile, but it looked a bit forced. Because it's almost Christmas. She waved a hand toward the tree, beautiful and perfect, just like all of Rosalie's handiwork. Everyone needs a tree. Jessica glanced around and couldn't help feeling like she was killing the joy as she wondered why in the world she needed a tree in her house. Rosalie had obviously taken great care with it, creating a masterpiece any celebrity magazine would be more than thrilled to add to their holiday spreads. But still. Jess stepped into the room, joining Rosalie, and placed a hand on her shoulder, trying to lessen the sting of her response. We're spending the next 10 days in Iowa shooting a Christmas movie. I'll see plenty of trees there. Yeah, but... Rosalie glanced over her shoulder and lowered her voice. You're producing and starring in the movie. How much tree enjoyment, holiday spirit time will you get? Probably a lot, since it's a Christmas movie. And again, Iowa. Lots of trees. Okay. Rosalie shook her head, obviously not letting go of her hope of a holiday spirit taking over the event. Your co-star awaits you for the meeting. Barbara just texted. She's 2 minutes away. Not exactly what Jessica wanted to hear. Things went smoothly when people were on time. Plans mattered. Plans got things done. And being a strong planner had gotten her this far. Producing at 30 wasn't something to sneeze at. Thanks, but a director who runs late? She shook it off. No reason to get off on the wrong foot. Barbara was a pro, and she'd make it work. Okay, let's do this so I can pack and get on the road. Rosalie gave a little shake of her head, probably laughing at Jessica's need for order. I'll wait for Barbara. Which was exactly what Jessica needed. She had other issues to deal with, and it was probably best to handle them without an audience, especially an audience completely made up of the movie's future director. She took a deep breath and went to handle Vince Hawkins, Mr. Hollywood's most eligible bachelor. At least, he was since their breakup. Hopefully, they'd work together with the same magic they'd had before. And if not, she'd figure that out too. In the game room at the back of the house, she found him playing billiards by himself. And, of course, dressed like a GQ fashion shoot was happening around him. He glanced up, giving her a once-over. That's a nice tree upstairs. He flashed her his signature smile. Whose is it?
What do you mean, whose is it? She tried not to get defensive, but leave it to Vince to rock the boat as soon as she walked in the room. It's mine. Yeah, right. Vince gave her a look that clearly stated he didn't even believe her a little bit, before sending yet another one of his grins her way. Since when do you get a tree? The need to justify her unwanted tree had her digging in her heels. It was in her house. It was Christmas, and she was not going to let Vince come in here and make her feel defensive. Well, I felt like it. Aha. Vince leaned against the billiards table, going into full flirt mode. But who needs a tree when they'll be in Fiji again for Christmas with... He drew the word out, and Jessica knew exactly what he was getting at. Vince seemed to be having a rough time letting go of this dating relationship. He was treating the pre-production meetings like business as usual for them. But it wasn't. Not even a little. They were friends now. Just friends. And she needed him to get that. She had wanted more than what their relationship had offered. They both deserved more, even as she still valued the friendship they'd developed before they'd changed it to a romantic one. Her best girlfriend? Jessica tried not to roll her eyes and placed a hand on Vince's arm. Vince, you and I broke up. Jill is going to Fiji in your place this year. She kept having to have these conversations with him. He'd even told one media outlet 2 months ago they were just on a break. Ouch. He winced. Good for Jill, though. He took a step closer, forcing Jess to stand her ground as he shifted right back into handsome, leading man persona. Before she could swing them into work mode, he went on. So, does that mean we should keep things strictly professional on location? That was a bud to nip immediately, and not just because of the no longer dating part of the conversation. This is my first time producing a movie. She tried to keep the nerves out of her voice. Vince would do an amazing job and have her back, but she wanted to be confident, professional, and taken seriously. My first big thing after the Asterlight series, and I can't let anything mess that up. Classic Jessica. Vince added a smirk to his nod. What does that mean? Coming from Vince, that definitely didn't sound like a compliment. You always have a detailed plan for everything. Again, not a compliment. No, I don't. Okay, maybe she did, but that wasn't a bad thing. Vince had accused her more than once of being a control freak who made him live by her detailed plans. Do so. She took a step back. 5-year-olds had more mature arguments than this. Well, excuse me, Mr. Play-Everything-by-Ear. She squared her shoulders, trying to make herself bigger to match his size and ability to loom over her. Not that he'd ever use that advantage on her. Vince was secretly a teddy bear. They'd always bickered. It was often how they communicated. But while Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn were adorable when they did it on screen, it wasn't always as much fun off screen. He paused, leaning into her space. You know, Vince grinned, waggling his eyebrows a bit. If this were a movie, this would be the part where we kiss. Do you see a camera? She was so done with this conversation. He flipped his phone out of his pocket with a not-so-subtle bam and another waggle of the brows. Jessica shook her head, smiling. Vince wasn't just a charmer. He was truly charming. He'd always known how to lighten her moods. It was one of the balances that made them a good team. Come on, truce? He tapped a finger on his cheek. It will be good PR for the movie. Jess rolled her eyes. There he went, pushing exactly the right buttons again to get her to do what he wanted. The movie's success was vital to her. She loved the story and was proud to make this her first producer gig. Fine. She leaned in to kiss his cheek, surprised, and yet on some level not, when he turned his head at the last second and snapped the pic. Vince! Vince flashed her a grin, that smile that let him get away with too much for too long from way too many people. This will look great on Instagram. That is not funny. This was the last thing she needed while trying to juggle all the other pre-production tasks and meetings. A personal PR nightmare. I'm not kidding. Delete that. Oh, come on. No. Jess knew when to put her foot down. With Vince, that was pretty much always. He gave her a long look, then shook his head as if he were thinking about it before flashing that get-away-with-anything grin again. Fine. Vince flipped to the pic, holding it up for her to see with his other hand. She should have known better than to just walk away.
We hope you have enjoyed listening to these Hallmark audiobook samples. To view the entire Hallmark Publishing collection, please visit dreamscapepublishing.com.